Hi, Natalie.
So good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm just always so thrilled to have a chance to chat with students one to one,
hmm
and get to know you better. So, why don't you share a little bit about who you are and what's important to you, and then we'll
Yeah,
get into it.
sure. My name is Lili Alice Walker Stiefel. I am based in New York City parts of the year. I also live in Germany for a couple months out of the year, mostly in Frankfurt. And I also live in Ghana, West Africa, for parts of the year. So I have this beautiful triangular, tri-continental life, in which I moved from, the North America to Europe to West Africa. And I started my coaching business in undergrad. I kind of fell into it, really feeling a strong pull and purpose to facilitate what I now know is a team coaching experience to enhance collaborative approaches. And it then turned into my master's thesis. And so that's when I really kind of hit the ground running. And I am really excited about completing my ICF accreditation and being a professionally certified coach. Um, and yeah, so outside of being a coach, I'm a theater artist. I went to acting conservatory in Berlin. I have a BFA in dramatic arts with a focus on directing the theater, and I am writing a one woman show. So that's very much a part of my life and my practice, and it's also part of my coaching practice. Um, and so that's pretty much me.
That's incredible. So, tell me, how did you become a tri-continental woman?
Well, yeah, I think it starts. I mean, how far back in human history do we want to go? But my dad is a black man from New Orleans, and so his people came from Africa at some point and were settled against their will in the United States. And my mom's a white woman from Germany, and they met in the United States. But um, very early on, when I was about four, my dad was stationed by the Air Force to go live in Germany. And so at that time, my mom reconnected with her German roots, and we found a bunch of family. And like I lived there for 18 years, and I speak fluent German.
Right.
And so culturally, I'm, kind of a German person because I wasn't really raised in the United States. Um, and ethnically, I'm, biracial, I'm black and I'm white. And so the more that I have grown into my identity and learned to navigate the nuances of what it means to be a black woman in Germany, what it means to be a black woman in the United States, what it means to be light skinned, privilege, all these kinds of conversations, the assumptions that people make in other parts of the world based on their experiences and the history of that country. Like in Germany, a lot of people think um, I'm Moroccan or I'm Turkish because there's a lot of like Palestinian, Moroccan, Turkish people that live in Germany. And so they just thought that I was that. And here, people have, people think I'm Spanish, I'm Latin, that's what they call it. So just kind of understanding how the world is mixed and how people are migrating all the time. And that made me really interested in Africa. And so I started traveling there. And then, yeah, eventually, my partner, who's very much a New Yorker, is we decided to get a house in Ghana. So that's how that happened. And there's actually really awesome coaching opportunities there, working with the consulate of the German consulate and the American consulate, and some youth leadership initiatives and things like that. It's a great country. And so I'm excited to also support the infrastructure and continue to build my business even there.
Mm. Yeah, I love the opportunities that present themselves in Africa. We have a lot of students actually from Africa and South Africa, Ghana, actually, Burkina Faso, and I've actually been to the DRC, to Lubumbashi, and
hmm
done some coaching workshops there. So it's so fun to see the way they embrace the coaching mindset. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but for sure the people that I've worked with. And so tell me, what is it that is appealing to you about coaching, given your artistic background and kind of where you've positioned yourself?
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like for me, coaching is the perfect combination of what I find most essential and most important in life, ultimately. I mean, I will say, I think even you mentioned this in class that sometimes people are drawn to the work that they would have needed most as a kid, maybe. And like my parents are great people and they were great parents in so many ways, except there's one specific area that I felt like I really needed more help with, and that was like emotional regulation and like optimization and just like being able to perform at my best. I think there's a lot about emotional intelligence and like regulating your nervous system and understanding, the difference between a why and a how question or a what question. It's
Yeah,
such a subtlety, but
yeah,
I've really longed for an approach that allows me to thrive, that feels a bit less harsh and a less like maybe a bit less mean than a lot of other approaches that I've been in contact with as a dancer, as an actor. These environments are very competitive and very elitist. And it created in me and it really enhanced this like core wound story that I'm not good enough. And so this the whole like my whole life I've always been like trying to be better because somehow I'm not good enough. And coaching, I think, does away with this. It just like negates this entire mindset and creates an entirely new framework around which I can organize my own thoughts, my relationship to myself. And then ultimately, what's the most fulfilling is to be able to share that with other people and support them as they dismantle that for themselves and really get to recognize and discover what it brings up in them, what they can discover about themselves, what new behavior opens up. And it just feels like it's like emotional. It's like maybe sometimes a little bit dramatic. I think about the drama of the theater. It's like it's very personal. It's very, direct. It's like I feel like you get a direct, it's like immediate gratification too, because you just experience in real time how questions or observations change the other person in that like really intense dialogue. But it's the complete opposite of anything oppressive. There's no judgment, there's no hierarchy, there's no right or wrong answers, there's no failure. Like it just does not exist in coaching at all. And that is so freeing and so much fun and so inspiring. And so yeah, and I'm really playing with, I'm inspired by you and I'm playing with just very beginning thoughts of what does it mean to be a theater director as coach? Because I know part of your studies have been like teacher as coach.
yeah.
And I've come in contact with some great theater directors and great minds and great artists, oftentimes, especially in the past more, but the industry has been so dominated by men and by like the power dynamics that men kind of just come in and they can be tyrannical if they want to. They can make people feel completely and utterly replaceable and insignificant. And
Mm.
so, really giving an actual framework other than just mental health or kindness and compassion in the theater, what does a coaching mindset, a coaching framework really give to a theater director as they take on that leadership role? And how can that enhance the entire rehearsal process and the ultimate, like the show that we are working towards at the end?
Well, and we've had some, professional actors come through our programs, and the feedback I've gotten is that it's very similar mindset to acting. This
Mm-hmm.
open mind, releasing like resistance and judgment and being able to embody a character maybe, or I mean, I've never acted, so I don't know, but what can you say about that, the link between a coach mindset and an actor's mindset?
Yeah. I mean, the most direct way in is curiosity inherently, like wanting to be open for all eventualities, like really embracing the full person and allowing that character, as you say, to have all of their feelings and to have a dark side and to have a secret and to be aware that throughout the course of your character work, throughout the course of your, TV show or movie or theater, there's an arc for this character. And so you're constantly looking at breakthroughs and changes and new opportunities of relating to other people. And for me, I think that when I started Coach Academy and I started the program, I could, through my training as an actor, I could tap into the stillness and the calmness of listening. I could tap into the comfort of silence between my client and myself, the power of lingering, the power of holding that eye contact, and the multitasking also. Like, okay, I can look at your eyes, I can hear what you're saying, I can be listening to you, but I'm also aware of time. I'm also observing your body language. I'm really aware of the importance of how your body language might be in conflict or contrast to the words that you're saying, how your voice is changing, because that is how human beings express themselves. And so to me, it's just a very natural addition to communication, and it's all the same. There's no like words are not more important than voice or body or silence. It's all part of the experience.
Yeah, and I would think that, having an opportunity to embody a character that
Hmm.
is not you but someone else in a scene,
Hmm.
you start to realize how little the words, like the words on their own, are not the being and the person, right? And the
Hmm.
persona is so much more. It's the body language and tone and energy that you give off that
Hmm.
creates persona, which is, yeah, I've never really thought of it that way before, but it's so how does that help you become more in tune with that global listening? Do you feel like you can really take in the entire person in a coaching session and, like really like self-manage your listening?
I do. I think that was one of the first aha moments that I had in structuring a coaching conversation and going through a coaching framework is that was kind of my way in. I think, now it's really about the finesse and about I think and just noticing when I have stories come up and noticing when other people are kind of lost in a story or are over identifying with their story, and then really having that skill to be precise and to like offer them an opportunity to let go of that, if
Mm.
they're ready to do that, and just kind of find the right time to ask the right question. Um, it can be kind of tricky sometimes. It's like, where do I start? There's so much here. There's so much to talk about. There's so much we could dive into. But I do think it really helped me immediately like let go of the need to give people answers. Like it really helped me understand that difference of being in a consulting conversation where I'm mostly talking and I'm the one that's providing you the resources that you need versus the complete other way around in a coaching conversation. It's like really that 80-20 or 90-10 even, where so much of my job is holding this container and holding this space and allowing you to have the experience of listening to yourself talk out loud. I've noticed
Mm.
a lot of clients, they like, especially clients that have never really experienced coaching before, that the first couple sessions, that's like one of their biggest takeaways is like, oh, it feels, it's so helpful to talk through some of this stuff. It's so good to have a space and have a person that will allow me to get it out of my system, they say literally. And I can empathize. I totally get it.
Mm. Yeah, well, it's the shift of ownership, right? It's when
Mm-hmm.
we're consulting and advising, we own the problem, we
Right.
own the solution, we own the space. And when we step into a coach mindset, we're saying, I trust you to own your own problem, your own solution, and your space.
Mm.
And that, I think, is the difference. And when I see people who, especially like you said, who don't know coaching right away and they come in and they're not sure what to expect, it can be a little bit uncomfortable, especially in silence that is held, and this, suddenly space where they get to express themselves and be heard and start to clarify as they're talking. And it's new, it's
Yeah.
different. And it
Yeah.
takes some time to build trust because we're not used to that kind of interaction, right?
At
Especially
all.
leaders and managers, when they start to coach their teams and moving from like a command control to a coach position, people
Hmm.
are, at first are like, what are you doing? Why are you asking so many questions? Right? Why aren't you speaking and telling me what to do? So there's this element of transparency that needs to happen, and this opportunity to transition. And that brings me to, like, in your experience, your global experience of coaching, what do you notice about coaching across culture?
Yeah. That's a great question. Um, I think, um, I think there is that cultures approach the idea of performance differently. So there is, I think in the US, the idea of increasing your performance, improving your performance. There's like an ambition and a drive, but there can also be some creativity. There can also be some like opportunity. We don't really know what's possible, but we want to be better in any way that's possible, and maybe in multiple ways. And it feels like there's always a willingness to have like a big vision and this like anything is possible kind of approach. My experience in Germany specifically, and like I coach a lot like Switzerland, Austria, Germany, so German speaking culture specifically. Germans have the tendency to be very like, is it right or is it wrong? Like, am I good enough or am I just not good enough? If I feel like I'm kind of fine, I don't think I need coaching, because like why would I try to get a little bit better when I feel like I'm kind of fine? And then it's like, so either things are really not good and like I really want to do something and it's like kind of feels dire and they're like, okay, fine, my last resort is to kind of get a coach. And even then it can feel like even the women that I coach, the leaders, there's a lot of rigidity. And some of that is, I mean, just the vibe of the culture, but it's also in the language, and it's the way that we're taught to express ourselves. It's the way that the grammar is set. And so, sometimes it feels like it takes a lot of German words to get to the actual crux of the issue. Um, and there's not a lot of space for people to give themselves permission to be free, to dream really big, to try new things, and really truly embrace entrepreneurial spirit, essentially.
Mm.
And specifically in Germany, even the government, politics, financial structures are not set up to support entrepreneurial thinking. And so if the actual infrastructure of society is not really set up for what if, then it makes it really hard as an individual who is a leader in a company to really embody that and integrate that into their own self. Um, and yeah, and then in Accra or in Ghana in general, it's this like, am I allowed? Is this okay? What
Right.
does it mean? Just like you said, I trust you to take ownership of the problem, but do I really have ownership over my problem if my problem stems from colonization? If my
Mm.
problem stems from hundreds of years of ingrained racism? How much of that problem, especially if you're not even super conscious of that, is yours to own? How do decolonize your own problem and then take ownership over it and then, get coaching to reinvent the solution? It's a really big ask. And so sometimes there's intimidation of like, how much autonomy do I really have here? And yeah, maybe as an individual I can work on this, but my higher up who's my boss who lives in another country might not tolerate this amount of permission that I'm giving myself. And so then it people can feel almost like we have all these great ideas and we have all this cool stuff that came out of like these cool results that came out of coaching. And now we've got to find a way to package them so that we can communicate it in a way that's still going to be accepted or that's going to get the funding that we're asking for, things like that. Um, so yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's super cultural, and as a coach, what we teach and what I think we want to embody is that open mind and open heart to whatever is showing itself in the session at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you find is what has been your best strategy for, just honoring what's showing up? And how
Mm-hmm.
do you handle the cultural sort of differences?
Mm-hmm. Emotions, the fear feelings part of the coaching arc
Mm.
is my is where that like all the rest of the stuff becomes irrelevant, and it really becomes about, well, what are you feeling? I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling trepidation, I'm feeling inspired, I'm feeling brave, like because through feelings, through their emotions, people find the words that are the most true. And usually in their most true words, they're not attacking someone else, they're not trying to put other people down or putting themselves down. It is truly what it is. And everything else, all these ideas, all these constraints feel, even if it's momentarily, they feel released or, yeah, like a not a part of the issue actually underlyingly.
Mm.
And so I like to spend as much time as we can in that section of the coaching conversation, because also accepting your own feelings and being able to share them and actually learning more about feelings. I love to share feelings wheel with people and help
Oh yeah.
them, yeah, like increase their vocabulary even around their emotions.
Yeah.
It's very empowering and it's can be very freeing.
Yeah, well, you're reminding me. Lauren sent me some of your bio before before this conversation, and I was just thinking about the experimental studio as you were talking, and this emotion and kind of experimentation with emotion. Tell me a little bit about what that is for you.
Yeah, experimental studio, it's like it's like being in a laboratory. It's like you go into this world and you have all these different tools, whether it's a possibilities wheel or the miracle question exercise, or, and you get to play with these toys. In coaching, they may not be Legos, they may not be things that you're touching all the time, although they can be.
Mm,
But you have all these different tools and you can kind of see, well, what happens if I mix this with this? Like, what happens? What's the chemical scientific process of my emotions? So it just feels like it's a playground and
yeah.
it's an opportunity to try new things and kind of like be someone that you might not usually allow yourself to be. And the studio is really the safe space. It's like it's the place where you can go and you can try it out. But if you break something and you leave, when you come back, it's somehow magically all fixed. Like there's no lasting negative effects of this space. It's just a magical, self-fixing, rehabilitating space that's always available and just waiting for you to step in.
Mm,
And so it works, because I started experimental studio when I was an undergrad and I was working with my fellow theater artists. And I noticed that sometimes as young artists, we lean into currency of competition rather than actual, like truly deeply collaborating. And so I built these team workshops for us to enhance our collaborative approaches. And that then turned into these larger things. And my school kept bringing me back. And I worked with grad students and we did interdepartmental collaboration. And it just like evolved. And then later for my thesis, I was like, well, can I do this collaboration not with a student and maybe not with an artist? Like, do other people that are professionals and adults also need this? And it, of course, kind of turned out, yeah, we do need collaboration. We do want to be listening to each other. We do want to feel more connected in our teams. We do want to release, shyness and inhibition and all these things that make us feel like we can't really listen or we have to assert ourselves. And so that's how it came to be. And I think it's really fulfilling for me to allow people to step out of their work, whether it's cubicle, whether it's their home environment now that we're all working from home, and step into this space and be an astronaut, be an artist if you want to, like you could be anything you want to be, and try yourself out. And then go run these experiments after coaching, right? You observe, does this really still feel true? You make some changes, you make some commitments, you take a week, you take a month, you come back and you're like, okay, great. This is what I've learned. This is what I'm going to change. This is what I want to stick to. And with time, you get to actually be someone different if you want to be.
It sounds like such a wonderful embracing of change and allowing a space to play with change. One thing you said was I think you said you get to be yourself or you get to know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like coaching is all about getting to know who you are through the dialogue, through the challenge, through the inquiry, the curiosity of the coach, the mirroring, the reflection. I mean, the person gets to see themselves through you in a way that they
Mm-hmm.
probably haven't seen before. So,
Right.
and we, in our when we start our program, I often say use your practice as a laboratory. Like, don't take my word for it. Use these skills, apply them, see what happens. Because I think what you said early in our conversation today, you said something about being able to experience the changes of coaches right away. Like, you get to experience it. You don't have to wait for the whole program to know and see and feel the difference it makes. You get to have a conversation after the first week
Right.
that is shifted by your perspective. It makes a difference right away, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that about coaching. And I was wondering, about your vision for what you want to build as a coach. Like, what does that
Mm-hmm.
look like?
The vision that I want to build as a coach, I want to be part of building a strong bridge between art and commerce, between creativity and business. A while ago, I had this fantasy that um, artists could learn the coaching mindset, and then corporations would hire artists full time, like every department has a full-time artist or something like that, that is there to facilitate and enhance like creative processes with a coaching mindset. And so the same way that sometimes big offices will have like an in-house personal trainer and all the people get to work with the trainer, or there's like a massage therapist that comes through to support people because we're sitting all day, there would also be like a creative coach. And that creative coach could do lunchtime coaching sessions or beginning of the day, end of the day coaching sessions. And just it becomes a normal part of the culture. And it also allows creatives to have consistent income and experience this corporate world, and it demystifies the corporate world, because it seems to me sometimes that people that have are connected to their corporate identity, successful executives and things, can look down on artists sometimes and think like, oh, it's very woo woo, and they're so eccentric or whatever, and they're starving artists. And then artists look at these executives and maybe even in banks and things, and it's like, oh, the money makers, these big suits. And so we objectify each other to some degree. And as someone who's had the privilege of living in both worlds, who's comfortable in a boardroom, who's like navigating exit strategies with my own companies, and also being, talking to Broadway producers and being a theater director and that kind of thing. Like, I just feel like they're so similar and there's so much crossover. And so I would love to facilitate a union that feels authentic and organic and sustainable.
Mm. Yeah, it almost feels like using, your artistic background to help people break free from the boxes that we put ourselves in, especially in the corporate executive world. This fear of I don't know if it's fear of change, but fear of being different. Like you said,
Hmm.
this opportunity to explore and experiment is all about, you said, be an astronaut if you want to be an astronaut. Like, what would that be like? Do we let ourselves slip into these other roles? Not
Hmm.
so much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think part of becoming an adult is navigating control. Like when we're kids, I feel like we want to grow up so fast so that we can make our own decisions and buy
Mm,
our own stuff, and we want to have control. And then we get older, and then we're given, like, we take on a lot of responsibility. And I think one of the normal ways that people manage stress and cope with their life is, creating this illusion of control. And so it's like, oh, I control my identity, and I control my family, and I control my job, and I control this whole department, or I'm, global head of marketing. And it's like it kind of allows us to feel like we know who we are and what we're doing, and we have this sense of control. And really what we see over and over again in research, through memoirs, through these kinds of conversations, is that relinquishing that control is the gateway to, like, a lot of the good things that we're all yearning for: more connection, feeling more loved, feeling seen, having great ideas, innovation. It's the relinquishing of control that brings that. But it's so counterintuitive. And I think if we don't practice it a lot, we lose that muscle a little bit, and we forget. And so then we try to create these results through what's most comfortable, and we double down and we try to control even more. And then it just, like, until we remember that, oh, actually, I have to let go, and I have to be a little silly, and maybe I have to be a little embarrassed and say something that I don't mean. And then I'm like, oh, okay, now I can feel a bit more rebalanced. Um,
mm.
yeah.
Well, and I mean, I think what coaching has taught me is that the only thing we really control is our perspective.
Right.
Right, and our willingness to challenge our perspectives, to
Hmm.
see what's really, what's actually true. And I mean, I
Right.
know truth exists, but certainly to challenge our first impressions,
Yeah.
and it's so key.
Yeah.
So when you talk about this experimentation and this freedom and this, all this wonderful stuff, how does AI fit into your world? I have to ask, because I'm asking everybody now, because I want to know, what do people think about how AI is going to impact coaching and just, that creativity that you're talking about, or that, the freedom piece.
Yeah. I mean, I I love change. I love new things. I love learning new things. And I really don't know where I read this, but like many years ago, I read something that was like, oh, technology or AI isn't gonna replace, can't replace our humanity. So ideally, what it's gonna do is replace what we then later can see as grunt work, and create more space and more time for us to do what's naturally human and what only humans can do. And that was so inspiring, because I felt like, oh, great, so much time is spent on activities and tasks that I thought only we could do, that now AI can take over for us. And it allows us to have this new perspective on what being a human being really means.
Mm,
And hopefully being able to build, like, a powerful relationship to outsource to AI what it is that we don't need to have our eyes on, and to really be an expert at being human. And so I'm constantly still finding new ways to use AI to enhance my humanity. And so, I mean, what that means in coaching is that I I'll like play around with different prompts, or different, image generation, for example, I think is super cool. It's like thinking about, marketing and Instagram and things like that. Like, what kind of images could represent this quote? How do I want to visually represent this quote on my Instagram so I can share the verbal message, but then also inspire people with a picture that feels like it's true to experimental studio? And like, I haven't quite cracked it, but it's something that's like really fun because you can give prompts into, mid journey and then see like what this AI imagination will come up with. And it can create realities that simply do not exist, that we cannot photograph as a human, that we might not be able to conceive of. Because sometimes I do find my human brain is a bit used to reproducing what it knows versus like combining prompts in a technical, artificial intelligent way. And it just creates new opportunities. And then that I can use to be inspired and expand my perspective and say, oh, okay, well, if this is possible, what happens if we do this, this, and this? And so then it feels like a fun tool and almost like a partner on this journey of continuing to serve people, versus, feeling like it's a threat or feeling like it's going to replace, me. And I remember one of the sessions that we had in class. So it's like I mean, right now, AI can't detect the changes in my voice and then know exactly why my voice is changing and then ask a coaching question that's better than me. I think that might change. And maybe if that does change, then that allows that, we integrate that and we find a way we get even more narrow. We say, okay, well, what is it that is necessary for a human to participate in? If I have a little screen on the side that's like, oh, detection and voice change, like, okay, like, what is that about? But yeah, I think ultimately, again, body work is something that I find very inspiring and so interesting, and like the touch of skin on human skin and the way that we can perceive each other, even if we are blind or if we're neurodivergent. Like, there's just so many ways in which we connect as human beings that AI doesn't understand yet. And so for now, it's still kind of dumb in comparison to what humans really can do. Um, but it also can analyze our coaching. It can, you can put a transcript into chat and say, from a mentor coaching perspective, please analyze my session. And if you were my mentor coach, what would you suggest that I do better next time? And sometimes the ideas aren't actually that dumb. Like, there's a couple things in there and I'm like, okay, this is helpful. Maybe I'll think about this a little bit, or I'll journal about it and then see what that reveals.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like what you're saying about partnering. I also really appreciate the perspective of freeing up humans to do other things, like, and stepping away from the mundane tasks and wondering, like, yeah, what becomes possible? Because I think as we get supported by technology, we also get a chance to become smarter as we focus our attention on areas of developing, humanity. So that's an interesting perspective I hadn't really thought of before. And I think that this technology changes every day. I think it improves every day. It's also filled with bias. We have to pay attention to. The bias of humanity is programmed into it because it's
Yeah,
everything that humans have done.
exactly.
So, I've read some studies that show, the pervasiveness of that bias in decision making after you've interacted with like a chat bot. You have an idea that can be, shape the rest of your decision making and impose itself. So
Mm.
it can really, if we're not careful, and there's a lot of, different points of view, of course, on this technology. But for me, I think you're right. For coaches, it can assist, it can support a coach to be better, but I don't think it can replace the connection that a coach can have with a person, and also that that energy that are the energetic connection that reveals so much more than what a technology can pick up on what it means to be human, right?
Yeah.
So, and I actually fully believe that there will be technology that can detect a quiver or a change in tone or an
Sure.
energy shift, because I see the way that, we're progressing with this. But I also think that that's not going to ever replace, because humans will be needed to interpret whatever
Right.
the AI is doing anyway, right?
Right.
We can't take it for what I've noticed is, we have student presentations. You remember your student presentation?
Yeah.
So I have been doing this work for 10 years. And only in the last year, before that, all presentations had different sources, different approaches, different points of view, different, really unique approaches to the same topic, even. You both present on active listening, and you come at it from completely different perspectives. Now, what I'm noticing is that people are using chat to do their searches, and it's producing the same references, the same results, and the same points of view, basically. So
Mm,
everybody is presenting similar, if not the same, content, which is, that's the pervasiveness that we're talking about, right? It has
yeah.
that power, which is something I've,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's where the challenge lies, though, in my opinion, because if everybody puts in pretty much the same prompt and say, hey, chat, help me make a presentation on active listening, everyone's going to get the same thing. But like what I did for my presentation was to sit and write down first what's coming up for me just based on who I am. And immediately, like, all my theater stuff came up. What does it mean to be on stage and be active listening? And so then like I totally get it that we want to reduce time, like I mean it used to take, in order to have that perspective, that specific perspective, it was taking people probably 10 hours to make this presentation or something. Now we can do it in 1 hour, and that's amazing, and that's great. However, it's how are you going to spend this 1 hour? What's the most efficient, uniquely you way you can spend an hour making this presentation? You don't have to have a huge vocabulary. Sure, maybe you haven't developed that kind of language yet. Fine. But what is it that makes you you? That work we cannot outsource. And that's the work that we need to use Chat GPT for. So before you put in your prompt, give it your bio and say, hey, chat, like, I'm a middle manager that loves people management, and that's da 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 and da da. These are my 5 values in action.
Mm.
Now, give me some main paragraphs on how I could make this presentation on active listening, and then that way it'll help you see how you are connected to this topic. What does it mean for you? How does it impact who you really are? And that's what it's really about.
Yeah, oh, totally agree. Yeah. And taking that time to customize the output with your prompts that are uniquely you, Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've heard you use some, references to the program, the tools, the ideas, the mindset. So tell me a little bit about what if I asked you to describe 3 words to describe you before the program and 3 words now
Mm.
after graduating, what would come up for you?
Um, it's going to be a little harsh, but I would say ignorant, arrogant, consulting.
Before?
An
Okay, not
ignorant,
after.
arrogant consultant.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
saying that with as much self-love as possible.
Yeah.
And then after, I would say like a grounded, informed coach.
Wow.
Um, because I was doing both mixed together. So
Mm.
often I'm working with people, especially if I'm working with an artist, it can be around money mindset and fundraising and like structure and strategic planning and goal setting and things like that. And so it was me giving a lot of templates and me giving a lot of framework and me owning the problem. Like, oh, yes, I know your problem. I know everything about your problem. I see people like this every day. All of you have the same problem. Here's my one solution. Good
Yeah.
job. Go forth and prosper. I'll ask you some good questions. I'll be a good coach, but it's more like, if I'm lucky, it's like half half and it's all mixed together. And I really just didn't know. That's the ignorance. Like I just really didn't know the difference. I didn't know how unhelpful and damaging that can be if I don't know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Um, and so, and it didn't allow me to really settle into like what's the real challenge here.
Mm.
I didn't know as much as I do now about how sometimes the first even half of a coaching conversation isn't really even about the problem that's really the problem. Like nuances like that. And that, that's not just a knowing. It's like, okay, when I integrate that into my coaching conversation, it just fundamentally changes my entire approach. It changes the entire outcome of the conversation. And so being informed and really being grounded in my beliefs as a coach, my beliefs in the framework that I'm using, the beliefs in the research that I've done, and like really coaching. And then if I consult, it's on purpose and it's intentional, it's different, it's separated. And so I would say that's the biggest transformation.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy to hear you, reflect on that because it's so interesting to me. Like, so how would you define then a qualified coach versus somebody who just calls themselves a coach?
Yeah, it's a bummer that we don't have more. Mm, let's see, what's the word that I'm looking for? Yeah, more definitions maybe around this, so that it is such an open space. Anybody could call themselves a coach. A qualified coach. I mean, I'm my perspective is I like school. I love learning, period, but I appreciate the benefits that organized learning bring. Institutionalized learning has a lot of downsides to it, and there is a lot of bias, and there like institutionalization inherently can be really not a great environment for a lot of people. But the big benefit is that it just brings in like all this information and breaks it down and allows you to walk away with actionable tools that combine a global community like ICF with shared upon ethics and agreements that just it protects me, it makes me feel connected to a community. And so yeah, I would say a qualified coach is someone who has a strong definition of what coaching is and why coaching is coaching, and you usually get that through some kind of a formalized education. You don't really just make that up on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that I guess the way that I liken it to students is if you want to be a public speaker and you go on stage and you go in with all of your patterned, like maybe and so language, your hesitations, you knows and I mean I'm guilty of all this too, but like it you've got to train yourself out of that to have an impact as a speaker. And if you just kind of say, well, I'm fine the way I am, this is fine, like I don't want to change, well then, like anything, any practice in life that you want to be good at, whether you're a lawyer or an accountant or a coach, you want to know the skills and strategies and techniques to support that, right? So the education piece is about the awareness you're talking about. You don't know what you don't know until you know, right? Before you came into coaching, you described yourself in a way that that person isn't saying, oh, but wait, over here, I mean, maybe you are, but you might be saying, I could go, and you came to the program for a reason. So, you wanted to discover what was possible, maybe. But,
Absolutely.
like, did you know exactly what it was? Like, I know for myself, I didn't know. I
Yeah,
didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't
right.
realize the impact of a closed versus an open question, you
Right.
know? I didn't realize the impact of silence and time to think
Mhm.
versus interrupting and trying to guide and influence, right?
Mhm.
There's these concepts, these nuances, as you said, that are so important to helping people discover themselves. So I really, I appreciate the work you're doing to spread, the power of coaching and professional coaching in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I recently signed up with this health program that goes for 3 months, and it's led by a doctor.
Mm.
And she kept saying, I'm going to coach you guys through this. And what really ended up happening is like her expertise is being a doctor. She's a knowledgeable doctor. She's a, in well-informed doctor. She's a studious doctor. But what I noticed is that she was telling us what to do. and she was completely unaware of how the environment, even online, I mean, we were all online, but I could immediately feel people shutting down or feeling pressured when she would come. I mean, people are here to heal, they're here to learn about their bodies, and you're telling them all the things they're doing wrong. And like that's not motivating. It's scary, actually. And
Mm.
I would, see people leaning back and closing their arms and their facial expressions changing. And I didn't see her making any adjustments based on these things. And so it just right there let me know she's not aware, or she doesn't know to pay attention to these things. And after a while, I realized, like, you're not coaching us. You're not coaching us. You're telling us, you're giving us medical advice. Like, okay, but apparently to sell this program, you thought it was going to be, a good idea to say you're going to coach us through these things. But it's like real healing happens in changing behaviors. Just getting information by itself might not be enough. It might not be the key to the breakthrough that I need to be healthier. What I really need is to understand what my competing commitments are, what the feelings are that are standing in the way and creating unconscious blockages and barriers that are keeping me stuck in patterns, even though I know better. Sometimes a lot of the times I already had some of the information. Sleeping heals the body, sleep more than 7.5 hours. Well, I didn't need to pay you to tell me that. But why am I neglecting my sleep? That's not something you can answer for me, because it's my problem and I have to take responsibility for my problem. And this conversation that I thought was a coaching conversation that was going to help me uncover more of that is now essentially ruined, because all you've done is told me why my brain needs to sleep, which I could have found that out on ChatGPT. Talk about AI.
Yes. Well, I'm just smirking because I just love how informed you are now.
Yes,
I mean, I might just hire you as a facilitator, Lily.
I would love that. I'm really here for it. Yeah, I'm really passionate about it because it makes such a big difference. And I think people don't know, like you're saying, and so many people are calling themselves a coach when really they're not. And it's unfair and it's kind of a scam. And like, yeah, it's really just unfortunate to see the amount of, because also at the end of the session, there were only 2 people left that were still coming. Like
Oh, wow.
attendance had dropped down so much.
Oh, wow.
And so I just feel it's even unfortunate because the difference of like ending a program and people being like, wow, like I just ended a 28-week program with you, and I would definitely recommend Coach Academy. I would definitely come back again. I took the motivation course while I was in, it was just natural, right? And you didn't have to do anything to convince me or ask me for a testimonial or beg me or whatever. It's just natural because it actually works and I feel confident. And this other person, like, I didn't have that experience. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's just because we don't know what we don't know. And so there it goes back to like getting that formalized education, getting that qualification that you can rely on, that allows you to know when you're within the boundaries of doing a good job and when you're not, and having other people assess you and having mentor coaches and needing to pass tests. I mean, it's quality control, and it's going to support your business and your work long term and the clients that you serve.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've started this 10 years ago. I've learned so much by paying attention to the audience, like you just mentioned, by reading body language, asking for feedback, acting on that feedback, making those iterative changes to the program every chance we could, and community too around it. Like you said, the mentorship and the quality checking and the compliance, like all of that has been learning, and all through feedback. Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember at the beginning of our sessions, I often say, I heard it from Brene Brown and I love it, which is, we're not here to be right, we're here to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
I really mean that, because to be right is to stand in arrogance, right? That
Right.
I'm better than you, I know better than you. And I really believe that the students in our groups that come together shape their experience. It's not for
Yeah.
me to shape it, it's for them to shape it together.
Yeah.
And they always say, like, oh, we got so much from each other, not just the
Yeah.
program. And I mean, you could speak to that. Your group was fantastic with the
Hmm.
quality of people, like the professionals and the experiences in the room were fantastic. So you
Yeah.
could experience the learning from each other,
Hmm.
as much, if not more, than the
Yeah.
program.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And the transformation, I was always so struck by the kindness. People were so generous in class, so supportive, so kind. We're
Mm-hmm.
still like, connected with each other. People would still be willing to coach me for free. And like the diverse perspectives and ideas and backgrounds. And again, like the potential for transformation. We all started here and we ended up somewhere very different. Even
Yeah.
the ones that didn't think they would. Even the ones that shared later saying, I didn't even think I was going to get anything out of this program. And now, like, I can't imagine my business without this program. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, I mean, it's been
Yeah.
really cool. It was really great.
Yeah. And I mean, it all starts with an open mind, which you came with. So
Hmm.
thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for today. It was such a
Yeah,
great opportunity to chat with you and get to know
yeah.
you a little bit more. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience? Like, how can people reach you, first of all? And,
Hmm.
anything else you want to share?
Totally. The best way to reach me is through email. Join my email list. Reach out through Instagram or LinkedIn. I'm pretty much around and would love to connect. And I'm happy to organize a strategy call. That's like the first step for us to really get together one on one and talk about a strategy for how we can work together. Yeah, I guess what I would love to share with people is everyone needs a coach. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not a shameless plug. You don't have to hire me. Like, I have a network of amazing coaches. I'm happy to connect people with other coaches. But I think that even if you don't think you need that kind of support right now, give yourself a chance, bet on yourself, and shop around, have some conversations with coaches. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, coaches will offer free opportunities, free conversations. Take advantage of those and really experience the power of what a coaching conversation could do for you, because you deserve it. You deserve to have that time for yourself, and you deserve to be empowered and take responsibility for your challenges and work through them and be free.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. That's why I'm in this business. But yeah, it's so good. Everyone needs a coach. Everyone deserves to have a coach. Like it's a gift, right? And it's the gift that keeps on giving, which is so good. So thank you for that. And we will put your contact information in the show notes.
Great.
And I just want to say thanks again. I
Yeah,
really
thanks for having
appreciate
me. Yeah,
it. Okay,
appreciate it. It's been so fun.
great.
Bye.